Laughed as I stood there, my backpack clutched to my chest. "You're worthless," my mother said, tossing the family documents onto the floor. "All your brother ever needed was me." I was 18 the first time I felt completely invisible in my own home. My name is Julia Hart, and for years I believed my family loved me equally. That illusion shattered in an instant. My mother, a woman who had promised fairness and guidance, had chosen my elder brother as her sole heir. Everything my grandfather left, the house, the savings, the investments, was supposedly destined for him, and I was nothing but an afterthought. I had lost my freelance graphic design job just a month prior. Rent was due, bills piled up, and every effort I made to prove myself, to contribute, seemed invisible in the eyes of my own blood. But nothing compared to the public humiliation she had orchestrated that evening. The house was buzzing with relatives. My mom decided the moment was perfect to go live on social media, so everyone could witness what she called my failure. Her smile was sharp, calculated, cruel. "Julia, you've been nothing but a burden all these years," she said. Every word was designed to sting, to strip me of dignity. My brother stood beside her, smirking as if the world had always been his stage. "Everyone watching can see it," he added. "You're just as useless as we always said." The camera's red light blinked at me. Friends and distant relatives were commenting live. Some offered sympathy, most laughed, reinforcing the narrative my own family was spreading. And yet, I did not react. I did not cry. I did not argue. Silence was my weapon. Every slow breath, every pause in my gaze, carried a weight my family could not measure. Amid the chaos, something caught my eye. A small, worn envelope half hidden under the coffee table. My late grandfather's handwriting adorned the corner. I hadn't seen it before. Something deep inside told me this envelope was the key. I did not open it. Not yet. Timing was everything. Later that evening, I left the house quietly, the envelope tucked safely into my bag. I met my friend Clara at her apartment. The streetlights cast long shadows, a quiet reminder that no one was watching us but the night itself. "You've been holding back?" Clara asked, eyes fixed on the envelope. She knew my family well enough to know the stakes. I said nothing. My silence was louder than any words. Clara reminded me, softly, almost reverently, that my grandfather had always trusted me with important instructions, secret letters, and careful warnings. "He believed in you, Julia, more than anyone else ever did," she said. "Maybe it's time to see what he left you. Maybe it's time to finally understand the truth." I opened the envelope. Inside were letters, carefully drafted contracts, and faint notes hinting at my grandfather's will. Not all was clear yet, but one thing was undeniable: there was power here. It had been mine all along. I knew confrontation would not serve me. No shouting, no posting on social media, no displays of anger. I would observe. I would document. I would act quietly. Every move would be measured, deliberate, and seen. My family had made one critical mistake: they underestimated my patience, my memory, and my ability to plan. As I placed the envelope back into my bag, my hands steady, my heart calm, I knew the battle had just begun. My mother had assumed she had written the story. She had assumed I would cry, beg, or falter. She had assumed my brother's smirk was eternal. But they were about to learn the truth, quietly, legally, irrevocably. They thought I was powerless. They thought they could decide my future. They were wrong, and they didn't even realize I was already winning. The next morning, my mother's voice echoed through the halls. She called me irrelevant in front of the entire family again. My brother laughed, as if my existence depended on their approval. But I didn't flinch. I only watched. After the live humiliation, I retreated to my small rented studio apartment. The streets outside felt empty, but, inside, my mind raced with strategy. Julia Hart, that's still me. I knew the first step was to understand everything: every conversation, every decision, every secret my family thought was hidden from me. I started keeping detailed notes. Every phone call I overheard, every whispered conversation during family dinners, I recorded mentally and on paper. I wasn't reacting. I was cataloging. My mother and brother had an intricate pattern of favoritism and manipulation. Money was used to control, inheritance to manipulate, and public appearances to humiliate. They thought I was naive. They thought I'd accept their narrative. They were wrong. During one particular Sunday brunch, my mother loudly praised my brother for a minor success, while subtly mocking me for the failed freelance contract. Guests laughed. Comments were made, and I wrote everything down, my pen moving silently but relentlessly, as if documenting a crime scene. Weeks passed. I began noticing discrepancies in old family documents, receipts, property deeds, bank statements. My grandfather had left clues about a shared inheritance, portions explicitly designated for me, not just my brother. Clara, my friend, helped me skin these documents. He trusted you more than anyone else, she reminded me. He left signs. They just didn't expect you to look. The tension in me grew, but my demeanor remained calm. The family saw only a quiet, defeated young woman, but I was gathering tools for a silent revolution. For the next 2 months, I lived quietly, working freelance jobs, covering expenses, and watching every family interaction. Each dinner, every casual comment, every smile from my mother was now a clue. I learned their patterns, their lies, and their assumptions. I began creating a digital archive. Photos, screenshots of social media posts, recordings of conversations, financial statements, my brother's bragging about inheritance, my mother's dismissive emails, even videos of past humiliations. They all became evidence. I noticed my mother often flaunted favoritism in public, but in private, there were cracks. Small lies, evasive statements, contradictions in stories about my grandfather's will. My brother was overconfident, oblivious that I was silently chronicling everything. Every encounter became a silent chess match. I didn't argue. I didn't confront. I watched, listened, and gathered proof. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be undeniable, calculated, and permanent. By the end of the 2nd month, I had everything I needed to begin connecting the dots. The family believed I was weak, that they had defeated me. They didn't know the quiet, relentless storm brewing behind my calm eyes. They laughed at me. They mocked me. They underestimated me. Soon, everything they took for granted would be returned on my terms. The envelope sat on my desk for weeks, untouched, but it whispered secrets I wasn't ready to hear. Until one evening, curiosity became necessity. I realized patience was everything. My mother and brother assumed their public victories over me had broken my spirit. Little did they know, I was quietly building a library of evidence, proof that would one day expose every lie, every manipulation. That envelope, left behind by my late grandfather, held contracts, letters, and notes meticulously detailing the division of property and income. He had foreseen favoritism, and he had hidden instructions specifically for me, his granddaughter. Over the next few weeks, my mother continued her charade of control. She flaunted gifts, belittled me in subtle ways, and praised my brother loudly at family gatherings. But there was a pattern. Every lie she told, every exaggeration, became traceable. My brother, overconfident and careless, left documents open on the kitchen counter, bragged about investments, and spoke to friends about his inevitable inheritance. Each slip was another puzzle piece I tucked into my growing archive. One evening, while reviewing the contents of my grandfather's envelope, I discovered a hidden clause in his will, a stipulation that my brother could only claim full ownership if I had not taken certain steps within 7 months. 7 months. The timeline became my framework. I knew exactly how long I had to plan, to gather, to prepare. Clara, my friend and confidant, reminded me, timing is everything. Julia, he planned for you to succeed, silently, but you have to follow the rules carefully. Don't rush. I continued attending family events, listening to conversations, noting inconsistencies. I didn't react to insults. I didn't argue when my mother called me naive in front of distant relatives. Instead, I noted her phrasing, her patterns, her predictable boasts. Every whispered conversation, every casual brag about family wealth, became part of my silent dossier. Social media posts, photographs, casual financial comments, they were all clues I carefully cataloged. By now, my mother and brother believed they controlled the narrative. They underestimated me. They assumed that humiliation and favoritism had broken my confidence. I never spoke. I never reacted. I simply observed, recorded, and waited. Each step of my preparation made their future exposure inevitable. I tucked the envelope back into my drawer, feeling the weight of every secret it contained. They believed they had written the story of my life. Soon, they would discover the author had been silent, patient, and vigilant all along, and the ending they feared would arrive quietly, flawlessly, and irreversibly. They laughed again at my expense, but this time, I was recording every word, every smirk, every sign of their overconfidence. I spent hours organizing the evidence I had gathered: receipts, messages, videos, photographs, and my grandfather's carefully written notes, all cataloged and time-stamped. 7 months felt like an eternity, but I knew it was my advantage. Time worked for me, not for them. At family dinners, I remained silent, calm, and composed. My mother continued her subtle jabs, praising my brother loudly in front of relatives, while I smiled quietly, hiding my knowledge and my intent. My brother, unaware that I was documenting his every word, left financial statements on the dining table. He made casual comments about my lack of ambition and dependence, not realizing each phrase was recorded for later. My mother flaunted gifts and trips, believing she had full control over me. Their arrogance became my weapon. Each careless comment, each overconfident boast was a thread in the web I was weaving. I met with my lawyer, Miss Lawrence, discreetly. She guided me on legal procedures, potential loopholes, and evidence collection. Every conversation became a plan, every document, a key piece of the puzzle. I began rehearsing scenarios in my mind: how to present evidence, how to remain calm while exposing the truth. My silence became purposeful, strategic, and unshakable. At this stage, my mother and brother believed they had dictated the narrative. Their overconfidence blinded them to my quiet preparation. They assumed I would react with anger, but I knew true revenge required patience, precision, and the power of evidence. Each family gathering, each conversation, and each social media post was observed and archived. I never spoke, never reacted, never gave them the satisfaction of seeing my awareness. As I closed my notebook and stored the evidence safely, I reminded myself, they think they have written the story of my life, but the ending belongs to the one who observes, waits, and acts silently, and soon, they will discover it. They thought the game was theirs to win, that I was powerless, but I had already started rewriting the rules. I spent the early morning hours reviewing my grandfather's documents again. Each clause, each handwritten note, revealed subtle instructions, restrictions, conditions, and specific allocations of property and inheritance. My heart stayed calm, but my mind raced with the possibilities. Every week, I continued my silent observations. My mother's careless bragging, my brother's flaunting of wealth, they left digital footprints and physical evidence, unaware that I was collecting it all. During one family dinner, my mother showed off her latest purchases to distant relatives. "I've provided for my children generously," she said, a hint of pride in her tone. My brother laughed, mocking me quietly, assuming I hadn't noticed. I smiled politely. Each word, each laugh, each careless movement was recorded proof that would later dismantle their narrative. Miss Lawrence, my family attorney, became my confidant and strategist. Together, we discussed options, evidence submission, witness statements, and preparing for potential objections. She reminded me that silence, documentation, and timing were my greatest allies. No emotional reactions, she advised. Let the evidence speak. Your calm will break them faster than any confrontation. Even in small, routine interactions, I found ammunition. Phone messages, photos, financial statements. These seemingly mundane items would become the backbone of my strategy. My mother continued to believe that intimidation and emotional manipulation were enough to control me. My brother assumed that my silence equaled weakness, but both were gravely mistaken. I discovered a ledger my grandfather had kept, noting specific distributions to each child and a secret clause regarding disputes over inheritance. The clause was devastating. Anyone attempting to manipulate or contest would forfeit claims entirely. I tucked the ledger into my bag and left the house silently. My exterior remained calm, but inside, I was building a perfect storm, an unstoppable chain of consequences that would hit at the exact right moment. As I stepped into the quiet evening, I whispered to myself, "They believe the stage is theirs. Soon, every lie, every betrayal, every careless act will be exposed, and they will realize too late that I never needed to fight aloud. The fight was already won in silence. They laughed at me, called me powerless, and flaunted what they thought I'd never have, but I had kept every proof, every word, every secret. I had spent months silently documenting every interaction, every financial slip, and every moment of betrayal. My grandfather's ledger, combined with text messages, photographs, and videos, formed a solid backbone for my plan. I knew that timing was everything. One wrong move could alert them, but patience was my weapon. I began organizing my materials meticulously, digital folders named by date, envelopes labeled with family events, every receipt marked. The house I lived in became a quiet archive of evidence. Meanwhile, my mother and brother continued to act as though nothing was happening. My mother posted lavish updates on social media, boasting about her control over our family's wealth. My brother shared videos, flaunting the car and the luxury purchases he assumed I could never afford. Each post, each brag, became another brick in the foundation of my eventual revelation. During a casual lunch at the family restaurant, my mother complained to her friends about me. "Julia will never understand responsibility. She's just a burden." My brother laughed. I smiled politely. Every word was noted, recorded on my phone discreetly, ready for the moment it would matter most. I spent the evening with Miss Lawrence reviewing everything. "This is perfect," she said, looking over the documents. "You have timelines, receipts, witness statements. They will have no room to deny anything." We mapped out how to introduce each piece of evidence sequentially, ensuring maximum impact. The goal wasn't confrontation, it was inevitability. When the time came, they wouldn't be able to argue or manipulate. While organizing the documents, I discovered a set of letters from my grandfather specifically addressed to me. They outlined exactly how to proceed if my inheritance was ever contested. I read them silently, realizing the extent of his foresight. The letters warned that manipulation by family members would automatically trigger legal forfeiture. As I tucked the letters and documents into a secure folder, I whispered to myself, "They think they are untouchable. They don't see the storm building quietly behind the scenes. Soon, every lie will unravel, every betrayal will be exposed, and I will finally reclaim what is rightfully mine." Silently, deliberately, and irrevocably. They laughed, thinking I was weak, powerless, invisible, but they had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. I spent the early morning hours reviewing my files again. The documents, receipts, text messages, and videos were arranged meticulously. Every email chain, every screenshot of my mother and brother boasting about their control over the estate, every recorded insult, they were all pieces of a puzzle that would soon complete itself. The calm exterior I showed to my family was intentional. To them, I was still the quiet, submissive daughter. But inside, a storm of strategy had been building for months. Patience, I reminded myself, was more powerful than anger. My mother called me into the kitchen to discuss finances. She smiled condescendingly, unaware that I had already saved every word she uttered in a hidden voice recorder. "You're just like your father," she sneered. "Never responsible, always a burden." My brother joined, laughing. "Honestly, Mom, she'll never figure it out. We're untouchable." I nodded politely, replying with nothing. Silence had become my loudest weapon. Later that evening, I met Miss Lawrence. "Julia, Everything is ready. The evidence is airtight. When we present this, they won't have any room to maneuver, she said, scanning the meticulously prepared files. We went through the timeline again, the hidden letters from my grandfather, the receipts showing mismanagement, the videos capturing the insults and humiliations. Every piece was designed to hit at exactly the right moment. One of the most crucial elements was my mother's live video rant from last summer, where she publicly called me a parasite in front of relatives and neighbors. That video had circulated widely, and I kept a copy safe. The more they thought it was forgotten, the more impactful it would be when revealed. While reviewing my grandfather's letters, I realized the exact sequence he intended. First, expose the lies, then present undeniable proof, and finally, ensure legal enforcement. The brilliance of his plan was in its subtlety. Justice delivered quietly but irreversibly. As night fell, I locked the files in a secure cabinet and looked at my reflection in the mirror. Calm, controlled. They think the game is theirs. They think I'm just watching. Soon, every insult, every humiliation, every attempt to manipulate me will collapse. They won't know what hit them, and it will all happen silently, perfectly, and without mercy. They still laughed, thinking I was harmless. But tonight, the first domino would fall. Scene set up, morning calm before confrontation. I woke up early, brewed my coffee, and reviewed the evidence once more. Each file, each recording, every hidden message, everything had a purpose. I wasn't rushing. This was a carefully choreographed plan. Months of silent observation had led to this day. My mother and brother were oblivious, laughing over breakfast about trivial family matters. They believed power was still theirs, that overconfidence would be their undoing. "You'll never understand how much we do for this family," my mother said, waving a checkbook. My brother smirked. "Honestly, Julia, it's better if you just stay quiet. You don't have what it takes." I smiled politely, saying nothing. My silence spoke louder than any argument. Later, I met Miss Lawrence at her office. "Julia, it's time. We present the evidence, step by step. Every insult, every financial misstep, every humiliation, they will see the truth, and it will be irreversible," she said. We went over the evidence. The grandfather's will, bank statements proving mismanagement, receipts, the live video of my mother calling me a parasite, every piece meticulously documented. As I prepared the files, I recorded a personal log, not for them, but for me. "They think they control the narrative," I whispered to the camera, "but the story I tell will be undeniable, calm, factual, and relentless." Afternoon, I went to my mother's house under the guise of routine family check-in. I let her arrogance show, allowing her to underestimate me completely. She bragged about her financial decisions, unaware that every word was being recorded. I reminded myself, patience is my ally. Every reaction, every word I captured would serve as undeniable proof. No confrontations yet. Silence was more powerful than shouting. As I left their house, files secured in my bag, I glanced back at them, laughing, calm, blissfully unaware. They believe they're untouchable. They believe I'm still powerless. They don't know that tonight, everything changes, and by morning, their world will look completely different. They thought their laughter had silenced me. Tonight, every lie would be exposed. I, Julia Hart, walked calmly into the office where the family meeting was scheduled. Every file neatly organized, every video clip ready to play. The tension in the air was palpable, though my mother and brother were oblivious, still confident in their assumed superiority. "Julia finally decided to face reality?" My mother sneered, adjusting her designer scarf. My brother smirked. "Hope you brought more than that sad little notebook of yours." I said nothing. My calm presence carried more weight than any shouted rebuttal. Miss Lawrence guided me to the center table. "We start with the recorded evidence first. Keep your narration calm. Let the facts speak." I nodded, steadying my breathing. I began. The first clip played, showing my mother's live video calling me a parasite in front of friends and relatives. The room went silent. "Then, here are the bank statements," I continued, sliding evidence across the table, proof that she had diverted inheritance meant for me, mismanaged funds, and excluded me from rightful assets. Each piece was a nail in the coffin. My brother's smirk faltered. I didn't comment on their gasps or stammers. Each reaction, each flinch, was part of the plan. Silence amplified the impact of truth. My heart was steady. My voice calmness that made them squirm under undeniable scrutiny. Recording this, I whispered to the camera. They always underestimate the quiet ones. They always laugh until facts hit harder than words ever could. Watch carefully, they think this is routine. But every second counts. Finally, Miss Lawrence presented the grandfather's will in full detail. Property, income, and a secret clause stating that anyone contesting it would forfeit everything to charity. The room froze. My mother's eyes widened. My brother's hands shook slightly. I closed the laptop gently, gaze steady. Everything you hid, everything you stole, everything you denied, now has a witness. And the consequences are unavoidable. The tension was suffocating. Outside, family members whispered. Inside, my mother and brother sat stunned. The moment of reckoning had only begun. I thought I was powerless. Tonight, the truth speaks louder than any insult they ever hurled. Scene set up the confrontation. I sat across from my mother and brother one last time. The lawyer, Miss Lawrence, had every document, every recording, and every testimony lined up. The room was quiet, almost unbearably still. Every glance, every twitch from my mother or brother carried weight, but I remained calm. You have all of this?" My mother stammered, her voice faltering. My brother's smirk had vanished completely. I didn't think you'd keep proof of everything." I said nothing. My silence was deliberate. Each paused moment forced them to confront their misdeeds internally. We started with the video clips of public humiliation. Every live broadcast insult, every cruel word played in sequence. My mother's face paled as she heard herself call me a parasite, in front of family and friends. Next, the financial evidence. Bank statements showing my inheritance being redirected to my brother. Receipts proving mismanagement of grandfather's estate. Legal documents confirming my rightful claim. Miss Lawrence calmly explained the legal ramifications. By law, these funds and property must be restored to Miss Hart. Attempts to hide or falsify evidence could result in civil and criminal penalties. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Every statement was precise, every document perfectly placed. The quiet confidence carried more authority than anger ever could. The weight of truth pressed on them silently but inescapably. I spoke to the camera discreetly as the room reeled. Sometimes the loudest voices are empty, and the quietest, the most underestimated, are the ones who change everything. The inheritance and property were legally restored to me. My mother and brother were publicly required to issue formal apologies. My social network and relatives were notified of the restitution. The family's reputation had shifted irreversibly, leaving them to reckon with the consequences of their cruelty. I closed the final envelope, a soft smile on my face. No victory dance. No emotional outburst, just quiet, undeniable justice. They thought a few cruel words could define me, but truth and patience always rewrite the story. What would you do if your silence was the loudest weapon? They underestimated me for years, but truth, patience, and quiet strategy always win. Would you have waited as long as I did? Subscribe for more Family Feud files.